The new normal has destroyed America's greatest city. So America's been under quarantine how long now? Since March? And we're still being asked to wear face shields and a snorkel to pay a T-Mobile bill. But worse than that inconvenience is probably the 32.9% collapse in GDP for Q2, the millions of people who are out of work or partially employed, the kids who have to deal with this cancerous attempt at social distance learning. This collective fight against the coronavirus, which was supposed to be 2 weeks to flatten the curve or something like that, has to be one of the most socially destructive impositions our country has ever faced. Yet regardless of the world literally burning down around us, many people, particularly politicians, are just ignoring it, just burning through tax dollars to fund stimulus checks while they map out phase 238-B.46 hashtag of the reopening process, and assuming ignorantly that the lockdown policy is just something we can all bounce back from once we have a vaccine. In the case of New York City, this new normal has introduced such an unprecedented level of market uncertainty that even lifelong residents are now going on record saying the city isn't coming back. Whether you believe the lockdown steered or cemented a healthy containment of the virus, which is arguable given some of the policy decisions the city made, like moving COVID-positive patients into nursing homes, a pretty sizable oopsie in my opinion, but we all make mistakes, right? Even if you're willing to forgive and forget that, the mass exodus of New York City speaks for itself. The public policy that was instituted, by all reasonable metrics, was a disaster. Manhattan vacancies are up nearly 130% compared to 2019. The city's revenue is plummeting, and corporations are paying astronomical prices for premium office space when most of the employees are either working remotely or have relocated to another state entirely. The most common retort to this honest summary of post-COVID New York is an appeal to the city's resilience. After all, this is the place that came back from 9/11.
It is about the vulnerable. It's not about 95% of us. It's about a few percent who are vulnerable. That's all this is about. Bring down that anxiety, bring down that fear, bring down that paranoia. It's not about 95% of us. And we're going to get through it because we are New York and because we've dealt with a lot of things and because we are smart. You have to be smart to make it in New York. And we are resourceful. And we are showing how resourceful we are.
But although talking points like this certainly project confidence and hope, something politicians are best at, the reason why New York City and many cities like it will never be the same is because market confidence has been destroyed, not because of the virus, but entirely because of this ongoing economic suppression. Let's examine some context. New York's vibrancy depends heavily on its experiences and capacity to enjoy those experiences. The draw of the booming metropolis is its markets. Things like Broadway, 1,000-seat dining rooms at Michelin-star restaurants, the high life, Fifth Avenue retail, all of these things have been crushed by the burden of lockdowns. Revenue losses are on average topping 80 to 85%. And thanks to these controlled or phased reopenings, most of the remaining businesses who haven't gone bankrupt are now stuck just trying to survive and hope that their industry isn't canceled by bureaucrats and the media. But for industries that don't have the luxury of reopening, like Broadway, what are we telling them? The artists, the musicians and composers, the servers and shop owners who depend on the adjacent revenue. Do they even matter? In an article titled "Lockdowns Are Killing the Arts," Jeffrey Tucker posed the question. Imagine England without Handel's Messiah, William Byrd or Thomas Tallis, or even the hymns of Ralph Vaughan Williams. Why would people have done this to our precious art communities? And why are so few objecting or even talking about it now? For that matter, what is America without live jazz, Broadway, and the movies and theaters? What the hell is going on here? The excuse is disease control, Tucker continues, as if choirs and jazz clubs are nothing but germ-spreading machines. There is no particular reason to believe it, given the wild exaggerations of the threat out there for a virus that reached its national fatality peak 3 months ago, end quote. That article was published in July, so our national fatality peak is now actually 5 months in our rearview. Yet for huge segments of the population, including hospitality workers, entrepreneurs, students, international and domestic, the state has determined that their right to pursue happiness, which of course means their freedom to make money and practice their trade, is temporarily suspended, and they just have to find a way to adjust to this new normal while politicians kick this pathogenic can down the road until things are safe. This line of thinking isn't just insulting to the talents and dignity of these people who were forced out of work. It also tells them, in no uncertain terms, that their right to economic participation can be forgone at any moment for any arbitrary period of time, so long as there is political consensus in doing so. And this sentiment isn't limited to New York. The coronavirus pandemic has exposed the massive vulnerability in the concept of central planning. While city leaders like Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo continue their desperate pleas for residents to maintain hope in the city's recovery, the impact of these lockdowns and regulated reopenings has forever scarred the city. And even if tourists return to the streets of Times Square and Madison Avenue offices light up again, there will always exist in the back of people's heads to have a plan of escape. Because if economic and social freedom is a privilege granted by the city, as these lockdowns suggest, why would you plan for that to be your home? How could you make long-term financial investments if at any moment your industry could be ordered to close? And although the city likes to pride itself on its tolerance and love for equality, the felt consequences of the lockdown have been anything but equal. 90% of COVID-related arrests, citations, and fines were issued to Black and Hispanic residents of the city. And also the new calls for tax hikes on New York's wealthy to subsidize the city's collapse in revenue and pay for its massive entitlement programs. This new normal is not a part of the American tradition. In fact, one could argue that it's actually an antithesis of the American dream. Rather than unfettered opportunity, people now have to await permission to contribute value to society. We've yet to see how this micromanagement of the economy will influence people's everyday living strategies in cities going forward. But unfortunately, for tens of thousands of people who have given everything, and I mean everything, to this amazing and triumphant place, only to be forced into bankruptcy because of the government's draconian pandemic response, New York City and others like it will never be the same. Thanks for watching, everyone. It'd be cool to hear about your city or state's coronavirus response, and has it influenced your economic outlook? Leave a comment, subscribe, click that notification bell for more updates, and of course, be sure to visit AIER.org for more great content. Have a great day.